But with that, let's dive in here. So yeah, this session's about ZIO Kafka, and I'm really excited to have two of the core contributors, Jules and Erik, on here with me. There's a third kind of core contributor who has a GitHub handle, Sprunland. Hopefully I pronounced that okay. Who's been around the ZIO ecosystem for a while and has done a lot of great things on different things of like resilience and different things. So definitely give him a shout out. But you know, people have different preferences of whether they like to be on online videos or not. So you know, we have a couple of people here, which is fantastic, but just want to recognize him as well. But I think the goal here is one, I think probably a lot of people are already using ZIO Kafka, but one, introduce Jules and Erik to give them a chance to talk a little bit about ZIO Kafka and why you would use it, obviously for Kafka, but why you would use it versus another solution for Kafka. And then talk about some of the work that they've been doing, because they've been super active. I remember I was really impressed by them when they were like, hey, we all were in like the Netherlands or something, and we got together in person to plan out like all the improvements we want to make to ZIO Kafka. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. So after that, I really wanted to give them a shout out and have them on here. But with that, yeah, let me hand it over to Jules and Erik.
Hey, everyone. Maybe Erik, you're on mute, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, you go first.
I don't know, I don't have much to say. Yeah, we are doing lots of stuff, and we will show some of them today if we can, and maybe also talk about what we plan to improve in the future. Erik, maybe you want to do a little presentation on how to use ZIO Kafka?
Sure, yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. I started working on ZIO Kafka about, I don't know, half a year ago. No, shorter, 3 months. Anyway, that's not why we're here. I'll share my screen here. Now this is visible. Okay, so what we have here is the example application that we distribute in the ZIO Kafka repository. So this example uses embedded Kafka, which is easy to start, but I'm not going to dwell on this whole part because usually you won't have it. So let's skip immediately to the main part. So we have some main application, some test topic, and to create a, well, let's consume something first. So we need to have a consumer, which is being built here in this consumer layer. We need some Kafka settings, and of which is the most important one is, of course, the bootstrap service. The rest is all optional. Let's see. Then we can use it like this. With the consumer, we can create a stream of a Z stream with all the messages that come by. Here we go, providing the layer again. We should rewrite it to this style. In this example, we take 5 messages and put them on the log. Like this. Okay, let's see if it runs. And it's happily doing nothing because we're not producing anything yet. So let's see if we can produce some messages as well. So for the producer, let's do it properly. Create a producer. And, you know,
Copilot is cheating.
Let's see if this all fit what I want. It's good enough. I never know if we need to call this live or layer. Anyway, we will need to have access to the Kafka environments, and we already got this embedded Kafka thing here. So let's put that. We need some produce settings, and again, we need to provide the Bootstrap servers. That's the most important thing. Then we can make the producer. And with that, we should be able to create some producer. All right. We need to implement. Small screenshots. Oh.
You need to download.
Okay. So we have a producer. We do that. Well, we have several methods to produce. For example, simply produce, which would synchronously produce a message, and then so it waits until the Kafka broker. Until the Java-based client says, "Okay, I've sent it." So basically, it's arrived at the broker. We can also do async. Then we get a callback, which completes when it is produced. But let's go for something simple now. We'll produce. So we already got the topic. We need to provide a key. Well, I don't care about the key, so let's skip that one. And the value is going to be the message that we have. And we need to tell the serializers of the key and the value. And because the consumer uses strings, let's do that here as well. Then let's schedule it according to the schedule that we got. And let's convert it to unit because we don't care about the output. All right. Let me kill this one because otherwise it won't compile. And in here, we need to get the producer. We need to provide it, of course. Then we can do something. Let's send hello world, because this is going to be our first ZIO Kafka application. And I don't know, schedule it every second. Why not? And let's run this in the background. Oh, so now we need scope. And let's also properly shut it down. Okay. And there we go. Where is it? Hello world. You can see there's a lot of other stuff in there, like the Kafka headers, creation time, partition, etc. Are there any questions already?
Yeah. What does interrupt do? What's that for?
No, go ahead, Kim.
Hi. Sorry. Yeah, there's a point on line 185 where you're calling interrupt on the result from the scheduled produce. What is the reason for that?
So this thing here is started in the background because it's forked. And when you start something in the background, you get back the fiber ID. So yeah, we have some background fiber running there. And then at the end of the program, so after we've consumed 5 messages, we can stop that fiber by interrupting it.
Now, I think technically we should be able to get rid of that, because if we've used fork scope, then that fiber is going to be interrupted when the scope gets closed, which should be when this run thing completes. So I don't think that it should actually be necessary, but I mean, maybe I'm missing something here.
No, I think that's a good point. We have a scope indeed, so that should go away automatically. Let's remove it.
Look at Kim here, keeping us honest.
There you go. It's gone.
Great, awesome.
Do you have any questions about this presentation? Do you about the code? Do you see how it's working? Do you understand everything? Or?
All right, so if there's no questions at the moment, we can dive a bit deeper in how, oh, there's a question here. What does my Kafka provide? Yes, okay, let's look at my Kafka. So my Kafka is this local wrapper around embedded Kafka. An embedded Kafka is a project that you can use to run Kafka inside your JVM. So there's a full Kafka broker running right in your own JVM. And it's very convenient for unit tests or for sample programs like this.
Yes. If you have a look at the ZIO Kafka test kit project and its documentation, there are helpers for you to use this embedded Kafka in your tests. So it's easy for you to start a Kafka instance, make your tests, and stop the Kafka instance. So it's all documented. So have a look. Here we copied the code from this module in this project, example project, so it's simple. More questions?
All right. So we're using plain stream here, which is the the easiest way to use ZIO Kafka. There's actually one simpler, and which is where you give a ZIO that will be executed on every incoming request, and then ZIO Kafka takes care of the rest. This is the next simplest one, where you get a Z stream with all the records. If you want to go deeper, there is also a way to get a stream per partition. So then you can optimize, for example, by handling all the records of one partition at the same time that another fiber is running with records of another partition. And then the lowest level is where you get a Z stream of Z streams. So every time a new partition is accepted, then you get a new stream there. And then when it's revoked, it will be, well, it will end. But yeah, I don't want to go too deep in there unless there are specific questions about it.
Okay.
I have a question for the audience. Is anyone using already ZIO Kafka?
Maybe I'll curl.
Yes, we're starting to use it now. So we're using it at my company, at IMG.
Cool.
Nice.
Well, if you need help, we are quite active in the Discord channel, so don't hesitate to come and ask questions.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have a Discord yet, but I will create one and join.
Yeah, I've been really impressed by the quality of the discussion there, because right now we're just kind of, hey, how do we publish things? How do we consume them? But there's been like a lot of really advanced discussion about like how do you trade off latency versus throughput and different configuration settings you want to use. So yeah, it's a great resource. And I mean, the folks like Jules and Erik who really know their stuff, who are there and who are very active.
Well, some time ago, we decided to move from our private discussions with the free maintainers to public discussions. We wanted to copy a Caliban example. Like when you read the Discord of Caliban, you see their discussions, and you can learn a lot. So I think it's good also for us to talk publicly, to exchange our ideas and stuff publicly, so people can follow and can also learn about what we are doing and potentially help.
Yeah. So Adam, one of the questions you asked beforehand is, why would you want to use ZIO Kafka? Maybe that's a good question to handle right now. So probably the answer is different for different people. But what I like about ZIO Kafka is that it provides this streaming interface. So you can do everything with Z streams. Like for example, here you can take 5 and then everything stops. But you also get the flexibility to run your processing over multiple stages, parts in parallel, parts not, stuff like that. And the second reason is it allows you to process partitions simultaneously. So it's fairly easy to get a stream per partition. And then each of those partitions can run in their own stream, and they're basically running in parallel, giving you a nice performance boost.
Yeah, for me, the choice would be, because if you use ZIO already and you want to use Kafka, or you need to use Kafka, wrapping a wrapper around Kafka by yourself is quite complicated. You can see it by the code of ZIO Kafka. The code is not big, but every piece is complex because we need to be reactive, because we need to implement back pressure, because we need to handle what's the name of this, rebalances, and all of these are we have to wrap the Kafka complexity, and it's like you need to know a lot about internal Kafka, and like I don't know enough about Kafka in the internals by myself to implement ZIO Kafka. I know some, but Erik and Steven, the other maintainers, are knowing more things about. And so all together we can do something quite nice. And also because it's open source, people can help us and stuff. But yeah, by yourself, I think it's quite complex. Someone in the chat is saying that this company, they are implementing it by themselves. That's cool. That's cool.
So did you guys ever use the Kafka Streams libraries? Are you familiar with those?
Yeah, I've used it in the past, yes.
So how would you say this compares to the Kafka Streams?
Yeah, it's a long time ago, so I have to think hard. And obviously, Kafka Streams has improved. So Kafka Streams focuses on keeping state in Kafka. So, and ZIO Kafka is in that regards way less ambitious. It allows you to consume from Kafka in a streaming fashion, and that's basically it. Yeah, of course you can produce as well, and we give access to all the admin interfaces that the Java client has. But we're not doing aggregation and then making sure that this aggregation can seamlessly transfer to another node or something like that.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I think we just a wrapper around the Kafka clients, and Kafka Streams is just another library doing more stuff for you. But we are just a wrapper, like we just a wrapper around the consumer, the producer, and the client. So I'm not sure we can compare.
I see a question from Rodrigo about if FS2 Kafka. If there's a comparison benchmark between ZIO Kafka and FS2 Kafka. I don't know of any. Anyone?
So we have implemented some benchmarks to take care of the performances and to improve the performances of the consumer mainly. And we have improved a lot since 2.1, I think. But we didn't implement comparisons. I'm not sure we want to play this game, but could be interesting. If anyone wants to implement them, go for it. Yeah, I'm comparing like the benchmark. We have comparison benchmarks. If you look at in the code of ZIO Kafka, and we are comparing ourselves to the native client, because if we are as fast or almost as fast as the native client, we are fast enough. So no need to compare with FS2, I think.
Yeah, I'm the same team as Rodrigo, so I know what he's talking about. So what I noticed is that FS2 Kafka and ZIO Kafka are actually quite similar from a API point of view. So that was interesting. For example, plain stream is something that is the method name is even equal. So probably they have some common roots somewhere. I don't know about the history of ZIO Kafka that well.
Yeah, to my knowledge, it's kind of both, I guess, people in Scala working in a similar domain, but I don't think there's any kind of common origin to the code. I think ZIO Kafka, Itamar Ravid, credit to him, knows streaming and Kafka stuff really well, and he started ZIO Kafka, and my understanding is he kind of basically wrote that from scratch based on his knowledge, and obviously I'm sure kind of informed by other things that existed in the world at that time. And then I think since then, people like yourselves have kind of taken it forward. So I think probably in a similar domain, a similar problem space, but I don't think there's any kind of shared, origin in terms of the code itself, my knowledge.
Well, what I can see is that I'm not trying to copy their code. I have never read their code.
Yeah.
There is a question. The question is, could you touch on support of Avro? Do you have an idea about this, supporting Avro? Yeah?
I don't know anything about the Avro survey, so I cannot answer this.
What we tend, Erik and I tend to, maybe that's not good to say this, but what we tend to advise to people is to consume with a byte array, serializer and deserializer, and to manage the deserialization on your side. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that because it makes it a lot easier to handle errors, for example. You can do it in your own way. And also you get the benefit of using these streams for having a good context for doing the conversions.
All right, where would you guys like to go from here?
So you also asked us about what we've been working on recently.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to hear that.
Yeah, so I've been working on making it more performant, but also safer in a way. But let's talk about performance first. So internally in ZIO Kafka, there's a queue of messages going streaming for every partition. And we've been looking at various ways to decide on when to fill this queue or not. Actually, before this, there was no queue. There was just a handoff point. The stream would request some more data, and then it would wait on a promise. And then at some point, we would have a chunk of data, and here stream, you have it. And then when it was done, it would request another chunk. And that's not very good for performance, because when the stream is done processing all this data, it needs to wait for the whole broker round trip to get new data. So the first thing we did is this year is get rid of that promise thing and replace it with a queue. That was already quite an improvement. And then we started working with different ways of deciding on when to put stuff in the queue. The first thing we tried is to work with, by looking at over the last, I don't know, 20 polls, whatever, when did the stream need more data? And then from that, try to extrapolate when it would need more data. And then instead of fetching it at the last moment, try to fetch it just before. And we call that the optimistic prefetch and an optimistic resume. And that worked very well in some use cases, but there were also problems with it. Some programs went out of memory. Lag went up in some situations. So we decided to remove it. And we now have a fairly simple size-based mechanism. So you need to say, I want the queue to be maximum this size. And then if it's smaller, we will try to fill it up with more blocks, with more chunks of data. In the last release, we made this also pluggable. it's an experimental API. So you can plug in your own fetch strategy. And then, well, whatever you want to implement, you get the queue sizes, and then you can decide when to allow stream to fetch or not. Before I go on, is there any question about that?
I don't think there are any questions. You may have killed people with knowledge, but there's no one who has any questions right now. So we can go on, and if anyone does have questions, feel free to jump in either here, or you can just post them on the Discord. And I think Jules and I are both manning the Discord right now.
Yes, of course. The Discord is always a good place to ask questions about this. Yeah, and the second thing, and it's actually the reason why I started working on ZIO Kafka, is that currently during rebalances, there's, I see a question coming up in the Discord. during rebalances, we have this problem of duplication of messages. And I think that shouldn't be happening during it's not a failure situation. So that simply shouldn't happen. However, solving this is hugely complicated. So I tried very hard already, but I found out that it's not even possible without changes to the Kafka client itself. So someone else had the same problem for an unrelated cause and created PR for that on the Kafka codebase. It was never merged, but I got it. I brushed it up and got it to be merged. So that's going to be available in Kafka 3.6. And with that, we can actually do this. It's still not going to be easy, but it's going to be possible. And it's now even so bad that I'm proposing changes to the ZIO Kafka, to the Java Kafka interface to make this easier for us in the future. We're getting in the holiday season, so I don't think this will progress very fast, unfortunately. So maybe next year it will be available. I don't know. It's going to be something of that needs a lot of stamina, I'm afraid.
Sorry, but so to be clear, you're referring to deduplication on the consumer side.
So the problem is, if there's a rebalance going on, then some partitions need to move from one consumer to another one. If that goes too fast, then the initial consumer didn't have a chance yet to commit all the messages. And then the second consumer will start at a too early offset.
Yes.
And that causes duplicates, duplicate consumption.
Yes.
So in short, that's the problem that I'm trying to solve.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know that exactly once delivery, the general wisdom is to handle the offsets on your consumer. But then, yeah, in this specific situation, it wouldn't help you because the rebalancing is the problem. That it's too fast, and they are not aware that they are both doing the thing.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, because the first consumer didn't get a chance to do the commit set, and it doesn't matter where we commit. It could be to the broker or to your own database, whatever. The thing is that the rebalance already happens while your commit isn't done yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
I think there's one other question about some tricky stuff in the Discord.
If the
I
partition
suck.
is stalled during consumption, how can we determine if the application ZIO program is stalled, or how much time application's ZIO program has before consumer is rebalanced?
I think that kind of gets to what you've been working on recently, right, Erik?
I'm trying to understand the question.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm understanding right, but at least as I'm reading, I think part
Sorry,
of it.
maybe,
No, go ahead.
maybe I'll try to
please.
I'll try to
Yeah.
rephrase it.
Advantage of having you actually here.
Right. So I mean, we were using a native Kafka client before, and because sometimes some of the messages require more time than we anticipated, and the consumers are rebalanced in between. So I mean, one of the things that ZIO Kafka does is it pauses the partition so that consumer is not thrown out of the consumer group. So I mean, in this case, for whatever reasons, if the consumer of a particular partition or a stream of a particular partition is completely stalled, maybe because it is doing retries forever because of the service issues, can it do it forever, or does at any point of time, it will be rebalanced?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Let me summarize it to make sure I understood you. So I think your question is about how long can we process a message when using ZIO Kafka, particularly because in the Java client, if you use that one, then there's some limit to that.
Right.
Yeah. So the limit is there because the broker or whoever distributes the partitions needs to know if you're still alive. And this liveness check is done by seeing if you're still doing polling. In the current version, I'm not sure how we solve that, the current version, because we've been playing with this, but we want to keep this mechanism because it's important. But also we want to make it, it's configurable. If you use the Java client, the configuration option is called max poll interval, and by default it's set to 5 minutes. So our plan is to do something very similar, which is that if you didn't pull data from the stream in 5 minutes, then we will stop the entire consumer and let the broker assign all the partitions to another consumer. That's not done yet. I'm not sure what the current behavior is, but I believe that you will get a run loop timeout at the moment.
Yeah, the current behavior is the current loop timeout exception. And some users, I think, if I remember correctly, some users were mentioning that they were not capable of catching this exception to do something with it. So that's why Erik is working on something to, instead of killing the full run loop, and so the consumer, if you want, we will kill just the subscription, because also one important changes that has been made 3 months or 4 months ago was to be able to use one consumer for many subscriptions. So if you consume with one consumer with 5 partitions and you kill the run loop, it kills the 5 partitions, the 5 consumptions, 5 streams if you want. And so that's not the best, because maybe some streams were correctly running. So Erik is changing this behavior to make it a subscription.
Yeah,
and also like
if we can actually do this per subscription, by the way, so we need to figure that out. Was this sufficiently answer for you, Satya?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and also, can you make it configurable, please?
Of course. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The run loop to my timeout is also configurable at the moment.
Right. Because, I mean, if you have this run loop timeout very high, does this impact the polling window in the native Kafka client?
No, I don't think so.
The reason I ask is because if we increase the polling window, then any new consumer that is joining takes a lot of time, because it only happens during every poll. And if we keep the polling window as 5 minutes or 10 minutes for whatever reasons, any new consumer that joins the group has to wait for 5 to 10 minutes. That's my understanding, because that's where we have to strike a balance. But I mean, before that, I have implemented a very small, simple library using a ZIO queue to avoid that, and have completely rely on pause the topic and retry forever if we have any service issues, because some of the HTTP services would go down. We would not know exactly how much time our message would be processed. So we would retry forever, and we would raise lag notifications to Teams channels to notify the developers. And of course, keep the polling window very short, 500 milliseconds, so that we would have a healthy rebalancing of our instances when there are huge number of messages incoming. Right. I mean, yeah. So that's the primary reason. I mean, for any reason, if we keep a polling window very long, yeah, I mean, our lag would drastically increase. That's the context.
So there's two things you're talking about now. One is the length of a poll window, or the poll timeout, as we call it. And the second thing is the max poll interval. And those are really completely different things. So the first one, poll timeout, is an indication to the Java library how long a poll can take. In ZIO Kafka, the default is pretty low, 50 milliseconds, which is very good for low latency, if latency is important for you. But if throughput is important for you, then maybe 500 milliseconds is indeed a better value. But the max poll interval is the time between polls. So how long you didn't poll. ZIO Kafka polls continuously. So any moment there is some demand for data, it will try to poll, and it will try to do that continuously. Only if there's no demand anymore, then it will stop polling. And if that then takes longer than 5 minutes, then you get the exception from the, no, not an exception, then you will kicked out of the partitions by the broker. So with this run loop timeout, it's a bit trickier to configure this correctly, because then the max poll interval may need to be raised as well.
Right. Okay. Got that.
Okay. Rodrigo asked a question. Is it possible to execute callbacks as part of the rebalance, similar to consumer rebalance listener? Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, indeed, you can concatenate the rebalance listeners. Indeed, it is very tricky to execute code there, because the Java client requires that you do everything from the same thread. So we hooked up a ZIO environment in there, so I can just give them some ZIO effects. But calling the consumer is going to be very tricky. the underlying Java consumer.
Okay, lots of great questions here.
Indeed, keep them going.
Yeah, about the max pole interval, there's also the heartbeat, right? The Kafka metrics also offer a heartbeat. So alternatively, you could use that, or you could use it in combination. But do you use that?
So I don't know. I know it exists, but I don't know any of the details there. Maybe
yeah, I'm trying to organize my mind because I knew something about it. But I know that you can take these in conjunction because, like you said, the max pole interval, it is to basically ensure liveness. But I know that the heartbeat also plays into that, but I think I need to read up on it to say anything intelligent. But I know it's a metric that's being offered by Kafka as well for a similar purpose.
Yeah, it's very Kafka internals, not much to do with us, I think. I don't know, not sure. But the issue with Kafka, it's so complex, you never know.
yeah, there's so many buttons and knobs to turn on. It's quite weird.
Yeah, it's a heartbeat response time max as well. So you can like have a heartbeat and then set maximum time that it should take your consumer to respond to that. I think that's it.
What else? Eric, did you get to covering everything you wanted to cover about the safe part in addition to the performance part?
Sorry, one more
Okay.
question.
Yeah, please.
Is there any reason that not to is there any reason not to run the main run loop in a different fiber from the applications program fiber? Basically, it will continue to poll irrespective of application response or not. I mean, I understand you want to notify the stalled application program, but is there any other reason not to do that?
I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but in any case, the run loop
Right.
you have currently.
Right. I mean, you mentioned that if an applications program, ZIO program doesn't respond, ZIO Kafka will stop polling, and the max poll interval will time out, and it will trigger rebalance. I mean, can we have a configuration such that the ZIO Kafka keeps on polling before max interval timeout or poll timeout, even if the application program doesn't respond in that window?
Ah, right. No, there's currently nothing for that.
I mean, is there a reason not to do that, except to understand if the program is stalled or not? But is there any other reason? Can you?
No, that's basically the reason. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But in the next version, once we ironed out all the wrinkles, the way ZIO Kafka works is a lot easier to explain. If you don't consume from a stream for some amount of time, then it will stop the consumer or just the subscription. We don't know yet. And then you can tune this parameter in any way you like.
So what do you do if your business has like downtime? Like for instance, during the day you have lots of messages, but then outside office hours, maybe you don't have that many messages. So there wouldn't be anything to consume. What
It's
do you
not
do if you want to
about
keep
if you're consuming, but if you're trying to consume.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I got a chance to work a little bit with Erik on the invitation for this timeout thing, and yeah, one of the things he was very careful about is he wanted to make sure the timeout only applied when the message when it's the consumer that's not pulling again versus when the consumer is waiting and there's just not another value for them. So he's watching out for you there.
Neat.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for your help by that.
Definitely, happy to. All right, well, we're getting up to the hour mark here, so I think maybe this is a good time. Either if anyone has any questions they've not asked yet, this is a perfect time for them, or Jules and Erik, if there's anything that you want to share or talk about that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet, this is also the perfect time for that.
Maybe we can quickly talk about what we want to fix in the future.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Personally, I would want to fix the commit interface. I'm very unhappy with the current commit interface because it's kind of object-oriented. You have like this record that you produced or consume, sorry, and you will use this record to say, okay, commit this record. I don't think it's very nice. I think it should be like just a function on the method on the consumer interface. So you would like consumer.consume, and I think it will help us to simplify the internals around this. And also we have some issues around the deadlock with this commit thing. There is a commit that has been made very recently to add a timeout on the commit interface, so there is no deadlock anymore. It's timeouting. We will release this in the next version. So yeah, that's something I would like. I started to work on it, but I have weird behavior, so I don't know when I will be able to finish this. Yeah, that's a thing I would like to address in the future. Erik, maybe?
I also have a short wish list of things I want to work on. One of the things is that I would like it to be possible to move commit handling into ZIO Kafka. So as you usually indicate how to commit, but we from ZIO Kafka perform the commit at the right moment. Especially with rebalances, that is pretty important. Also, I had some experimental branches where we merged commits. So you could have 5 streams running in parallel and they all are committing asynchronously. But if you then merge the commits from those 5 streams, you get a very good performance boost because brokers don't like commits that much. There's a quite low upper bound on how many commits you can do. And then when all that's done, and also what Jules just said, then maybe we can work on improving the transactional interface, because doing transactions now is quite hard.
So we got one more question from the Discord, and then maybe I have one question myself. So the question from the Discord is, could you share best practices or ideas on mocking the producer and consumer in tests? And I think we've got some, or you've got some specific functionality for testing. So maybe do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So yeah. So I can even show. So we have this. Let me show it. Showing is best.
Yeah.
Share. Can you see my screen? You should.
Yes.
Yes. How do I?
Saying a draft release.
So this is a draft. We're improving lots of things. We release a new version soon. But so yes, we have this test kit thing containing a lot of helpers for you to be able to easily write integration tests. Why integration tests? Because you will start a Kafka instance, or you will have a Kafka instance started somewhere, and you will run your tests on this Kafka instance. So it's not mocking, it's more about exactly doing things on Kafka. And so there is deep documentation about testing, about this test kit. So you can have a look. And if you want to mock, really, I don't know the best. The thing I would probably do is, instead of trying to mock the consumer or the producer, is maybe to wrap into an interface, into a service, into something. And so you don't have to mock the low-level consumer or producer, but you can mock your own interface. And it will be easier for you to know how to mock this interface and how to do stuff, and to test the code using this interface. I would decouple things like this. I don't like to have to mock like low-level libraries like ZIO Kafka. So I usually wrap in an interface and then the code using this interface. And if you want to test this wrapper, this interface, you would use probably the test kit, because you would need an integration test in a way. So that's how I would do it. Like,
okay, great. And so I guess I'll take the privilege of having the last question. If people want to contribute to the library and get involved, how can they do that? Are there particular issues that you're looking for help on, or is there a particular person they should reach out to? Kind of how can they do that? Because I think we got a lot of people here who are enthusiastic and are enjoying this library and interested. So I think it's always great to get more people involved, because like the two of you, I mean, you're not, I mean, you're amazing, but you're not like rocket scientists or anything. Like, I think you were normal developers once, and I think other people can do what you're doing if they want to and put the time in.
So I marked this one because it's just updating an example project outside to help people start. Someone was suggesting it would be a good idea. I think the best is to come in Discord and talk with us, because yes, we are very, very present and active on Discord. So and if all, as I mentioned at the beginning, all our discussions are public, so everything is happening in this channel. So yeah, I think the best would be to join the Discord and to come to talk to us, and that would be the best start, in my opinion. Erik?
Awesome.
Yeah, just create PRs and send them in GitHub. That's always welcome.
Yeah, and I just pasted the link to the Discord that has the ZIO Kafka channel in this Discord. And yeah, I think the other thing that's just noteworthy here is, I think Jules and Erik, both of you, you were not the original authors of this library. I think there was a good amount of time this library existed before either of you were really actively contributing. So I think both of you have experience in Kafka before, but you got into it at a point where at one point you were like probably everyone in the audience was, of you didn't know this stuff either, and you got in and you learned about it and you've pushed it forward and kind of made it your own. So I think it's a great example that you kind of don't have to be like the original person to get involved and to learn and to do stuff.
Yeah, we were just interested in helping, I think. That's it.
Yeah, the same is true for Steven, the third contributor.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, from the three of us, the first one.
I know, now you're the triumvirate. Yeah. All right, well, I think that's really all I had. So I mean, I want to thank you both, as well as Steven, who's not with us today, but I want to thank you for all of your work on this. It's been really amazing, and I think your kind of enthusiasm and your commitment and your real desire to kind of do things in the best way versus just kind of accepting, well, this is the way they are right now, so it has to be that way is really impressive. So I mean, thank you for that. Thank you for joining today. And for everyone, hope you have a great weekend here. It's, it's at least in most parts of the world, it's the summer. So hopefully we're all getting out and enjoying ourselves.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Adam.
See you on
Thanks so much,
Discord.
everyone. Yeah.